Thank you so much, Ruthvi. That was pretty amazing to look through the presentation, the design of Pine Biotech after such a long time. It's always kind of a nostalgic journey for me to look at everything. And so I guess uh, we are ready to go. And thank you so much for this opportunity and providing me this platform once again to talk about this. I don't know what happened in the past few years, but this field has just got its golden era, you can say. And right now, everybody, every organization, every department is talking about astrobiology. So before we move on to talk about the fantastic and interesting aspects of astrobiology and the research domains that is present, let me introduce you to who am I, and let's just give you a brief introduction about me and my journey so far. So as Ruthvik introduced me, I am an ex-research intern at Pine Biotech, and let me tell you, I was the first ever research intern of Pine Biotech India. So just like you guys are doing, I had also gone through the courses and I earned my certificates and stuff. And the mentors are so much friendly to me. Even today, you can see we are very much, I'm in touch with Ilya, and he was very kind enough to pen down some very nice and kind words for me. And so that's the environment, that's the community we share at Pine. And even today I am really much very much in touch with almost all the mentors, and it's pretty awesome. But let me talk about what happened after that, after I completed my Pine's internship. And then what? So I had this dream of coming to this beautiful city of St. Petersburg, which is also known as the Venice of the North, and get enrolled in a university which is known as ITMO University. ITMO stands for Information Technology, Mechatronics and Optics, and that's the logo. So I wanted to be a part of this university and study molecular biology and biotechnology, but didn't really want to do it straightforward. So I looked for a scholarship opportunity, which is known as the Open Door Scholarship, which is provided by the Russian governments. And I hustled and got the result of the scholarship exam and scholarship project, and I ranked fourth globally and also received 100% scholarship from the government of Russia. And that led me to a direct admission to my dream university, you can say, without any of the exam or entrance examinations. And yeah, finally, I'm pursuing my master's completely for free. So let's talk about my research experience here. So there's the SCAMPT laboratories, which stands for Solutions of Chemistry, Advanced Materials, and Technologies. That's a huge family you can see over here. And currently, I'm involved in various projects, involved in various research groups, trying to do something great in the field of astrobiology. I would have loved to share the results with you, but they are pretty much premature right now, and not really authorized to share them right now. But maybe in a future SciOmics session, or maybe some other sessions when they are good to go, good to be published, I can talk about them more. But finally, I cannot forget Space Onova, the company where I am currently the head at the Department of Astrobiology. And let me quickly share what's the vision of Space Onova and why am I devoting my time to Space Onova. Well, Space Onova is a company which has the vision to enable literally any space enthusiast to become a space technologist in any of the domain of space science they want. And that's the kind of vision we all share. And particularly being the head of the Department of Astrobiology, I really want to understand the perspectives of life beyond the cosmic boundaries. Let me give you an example. Just like the nature of physics changed once we took into consideration the universal phenomenon like the dark matter or the phenomenon of black hole, similarly, it's my strong belief that biology would also see new heights, will be explored in a different way, will go beyond our expectations when we start looking at biology beyond the boundaries of Earth. So that's a lot about me, and let's not talk about me much, and let's devote our attention and time to this beautiful field called astrobiology. Let's not drift away from today's topic. So, this is a night sky, and I'm pretty much sure you once in your life might have looked up at the night sky, looked up at these twinkling stars and glowing planets and wondered if you are the only one, if Earth is the only place where life is possible. And with all the scientific advancements that we have had over the past decades and so, Mars seems to be one planet where life might be possible right now or might have been possible in the past. We never know. That's our neighbor, and so many missions are planned to Mars. But Mars is not the only one. We also have other candidates. For example, Jupiter's moon Europa. Maybe life exists on Europa. But so far, over the years, after studying and searching so much, the only planet which we have discovered to have life in this universe is a dear pale blue dot, or also known as a blue marble, Earth. So the question which I get asked almost everywhere, everybody asks me this question, that why do we really study astrobiology? Why are we so interested to search for life beyond Earth? What's the need? Well, the short and crisp answer to that question would be we are natural explorers, That's the human nature. That's in our gene, that's in our DNA, to explore, to know. But why the universe? What's so special about that? Well, let's take, for example, this particular comet, or maybe let's take an example of any star, for example, the sun. Everything in this universe, each and every object is made up of the same star stuff. And what do I mean by the term star stuff? Well, have a look at this. This is a pretty familiar picture to you all, right? This is the periodic table of elements, but it's color coded pretty differently. And if you focus on, suppose, hydrogen, the first element, it's color coded in blue or azure color. And in the legends, you can find the term Big Bang fusion. So hydrogen originated when there was a Big Bang fusion. Let's take, for example, carbon, because every life form is made up of carbon, right? That's the most common element we know. So carbon is green and yellow. That shows exploding massive stars and dying low mass stars. So if you look at oxygen, if you look at any other element discovered so far, we would see its origin or its presence in some or the other stellar event, in some or the other cosmic phenomenon. And therefore, we conclude that each and every object in this universe is made up of the same elements. It's me, whether it's me or it's you or it's a star or a black hole, everything is made up of the same element. And therefore, we feel a strong connection between each of us, and we want to explore them and know more about them. So have you ever tried to contact the so-called life beyond Earth? Well, to be honest, yes, we did try to contact them. That's known as the Arecibo message. It was something looking like this. I would explain what it means. And it was devised by the great scientist Frank Drake in association with Carl Sagan. And it was shot towards globular star cluster M13 with a huge data, that's 1679 bits of data, 25,000 light years away. Now, what does this message contain? What's the content of this particular message? So if you look at the first level here, the whites, it's the decimal system that we have, the numbers 0 to 9. Then comes the purple one. The purple one is the elements which form our nucleic acid, that is hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. Coming to the green part, this shows the different nucleotides that we have: adenine, guanine, cytosine, you know that very well. Then coming down, it's the double helix structure of our DNA. This is a human structure, that's pretty easy to understand. Here, the yellow region shows the 9 planets. It was 9 back then, but now unfortunately Pluto has been declared as a dwarf planet. And finally, the Arecibo radio tower, which shot this signal. Unfortunately, this Arecibo radio observatory was taken down a couple of years ago due to malfunctioning. So we have tried to contact them, the so-called them, but have we ever received any reply? Well, to be honest, we did, but we really don't know from where it came from. So we received a message from the so-called Sagittarius cluster, or the Sagittarius constellation, which is pretty much visible in the night sky. And this is termed as the famous wow signal. Well, what is it? This is a very sharp and strong radio signal. sharp and very prominent than usual. So you can see the usual threshold, it was way beyond that. And the scientist, Jerry R. Ehman, was so impressed by of this particular peak in the graph that he wrote wow beside the paper. And since then, we call it the wow signal. We really don't know whether it was an alien civilization which sent us this message, but definitely it was really exciting and interesting to get. So, talking about life beyond Earth, do aliens really exist? That's one of the most common question or most common thought which comes to people's mind. The answer is we don't know. We have never ever detected any alien life form. We have never ever contacted them. But we do have some imagery of aliens, mostly inspired by the movies, like this one. Maybe they are blue in color, owing to the copper rich blood, maybe, just like it's similarly seen in the octopus. Maybe aliens are green with three eyes, like this toy alien from the Toy Story movie. Or maybe aliens would be like the Yoda, and many people would agree. Who knows? Maybe alien might not be so cute after all, and they are these ferocious beings with a hard exoskeleton, with a scorpion-like tail, ready to pounce upon us and kill us the moment they detect us. Or maybe aliens possess very high supreme powers like the Mad Titan Thanos from the Avengers franchise, and maybe they are on a mission to annihilate the 50% of Earth's population. The answer is we don't know, and the possibilities are endless. But I want to draw your focus to this particular creature. If you know what's the name of this creature, you can head down to the chat section and write it down. But I'm pretty much sure you would agree this is very peculiar, not something which we see in our locality. This is known as a Portuguese man of war. And from here, you would say that, okay, this is a creature with with few tentacles. That's common, but that's not the case. These are not its tentacles, but these are very small microbial animals living together in a colony, in a symbiotic relationship, giving rise to the entire structure. And that's pretty awkward or pretty unusual. Similarly, have a look at this creature. This looks like a giant cockroach, right? With disgustingly large amounts of feet. And this is something which we don't see in our home crawling. That would be disgusting. This is known as the deep sea giant isopod. And again, this creature is so unique. Similarly, have a look at this creature. What is this? Well, this is known as the axolotl. And what's so special or unique about axolotl? Well, axolotl, the unique characteristic feature of axolotl is they have reproductive properties, or they show sexual reproduction or secondary sexual characteristics when they are a larva. When they are babies, but once they grow up, once they become adult, they lose that property, and that's known as retrogressive metamorphosis. So, there's so much about life on Earth itself that we are not really aware of, even after so many years of research. So it begs us to ask the question, what is life? Do we really understand life? Now, if I ask you, what are those characteristic features which defines life or which segregates living beings from non-living beings, I'm pretty much sure you would all agree upon these particular points. For example, responsiveness or consciousness, growth, definitely living organisms grow, metabolism and energy transformation, definitely that's key to survival, and obviously reproduction. Without reproduction, living beings are as good as non-living things. That's some people's ideologies. But I came across certain examples which begged me to question my belief. Let's take, for example, responsiveness. Have a look at this picture. This particular thing which is moving here is a nanoparticle, and it's responding to light, to the stimulus of light. So without any artificial help, this is showing responsiveness. On the contrary, here's a plant. What do you think? Will the plant chase you and slap you if you break one flower or a leaf? Well, a plant never does that, exceptions included. So, even though they usually don't show responses, they are living beings, and therefore responsiveness is pretty ambiguous. Let's take, for example, growth. You must have seen these balls, right? These are known as hydrogel balls. They have the property to absorb water and grow in size. And that's again growth in size and volume. So again, its growth is pretty much ambiguous. Let's talk about metabolism and energy transformation. You would agree that this is a pretty important metabolic reaction, that is respiration, the process of breaking down glucose with the help of oxygen, releasing energy in the form of ATP and carbon dioxide and water as byproducts. But again, on the down picture, you can see paper burning. And that's again the same reaction. That's carbohydrate with the help of oxygen burning, releasing energy in the form of light and heat, giving out CO2 and H2O as byproduct. And again, that's a challenging question to ask. Finally, let's talk about reproduction. Well, you are all familiar with this particular picture, and copying one particular file from one device to another gives rise to an independent file which has its independent identity, but it resembles its parent. That's pretty much what reproduction is. So, if we talk about these characteristics, they lead to more confusion and more unclarity, and therefore, maybe we should really think about defining life in a better way. And one of my friends suggested in one of the previous lectures that if we combine all these characteristics together and combine them and confine them in a particular vessel which we call a cell, maybe then we can define that this is something which we call as living being. Maybe that's a correct explanation, but we really need to understand life on Earth, and then only we would be in a position to understand life beyond Earth. Also, the discovery of certain bacteria species, which we known as extremophiles, expanded the knowledge of life, expanded the range in which we can expect life. So here's a quick activity we can do. Think of three places where life can never exist according to you, three very hostile regions. If you ask me, well, it would be volcanic eruptions, high temperature, thousands of degrees of centigrade, and so many poisonous gases. There's carbon monoxide and stuff. So life should not exist here. Well, similarly, in a very acidic lake, pH around 1 or even below that, and life should not exist in a place which is so highly acidic or maybe even alkaline. And the last place where, according to me, I thought that life can never exist was a vacuum of space with so many harmful solar radiations. There's microgravity, there's low pressure, no oxygen. So, pretty hostile conditions for life, right? Well, again, my beliefs got a death blow when I came across certain species of bacterium, for example, the Streptomyces thermophilic, which can easily survive in volcanic eruptions. Then there's Acidothiobacillus thiooxidans, which can also thrive in highly acidic pH. And in space, in the vacuum of space, completely exposed was Deinococcus radiourens, the bacterium species which could survive for more than a year. And that groundbreaking experiment about the International Space Station completely changed the way we look at life itself. Talking about this particular experiment about the International Space Station, it spanned between May 2015 and May 2018. It was named the Tanpopo mission, and it was designed by JAXA, the Japanese aeronautical company. And in the Japanese section of the International Space Station, which is known as Kibo, they exposed Deinococcus radiourens without any artificial support. And they found that they could survive pretty easily for more than 1 year. It's not that there was no change noticed. Definitely, there was an exo layer that was formed similar to something like an endospore or stuff, which died and dried off, but the interior was surviving. And also, scientists discovered that Deinococcus radiourens could survive so well because of its highly fast and efficient DNA repair mechanism. And that is pretty amazing to study further, because if we can devise something and utilize that property, maybe we can realize the dream of long duration space flights without getting harmed someday. The Tanpopo mission also had another objective, that was capturing the dust flybys at the highest level of the low Earth orbit, that is 400 kilometers from the Earth's surface. So these are ultra low density silica gels or aerogels, and they are very porous. So they were also exposed in the hope of capturing maybe life forms, microbes, or maybe some sort of amino acids. And now they have been brought back to Earth, and research is going on with the help of PCR and so many other mechanisms. And who knows, fingers crossed, and we might find something interesting in the future. Talking about extremophiles, there was a case study done in Brazil in the Sao Paulo and Sao Pedro archipelagos. And you can see here in the list, there were so many different types of extremophiles that were found. There was hyperthermophiles, thermophiles, cyclophiles, acidophiles, and the list just goes on and on. You can see that they can survive at staggeringly high temperatures, or maybe very high radiation exposures can also not affect them. And these extremophiles, known as the polyextremophiles, forms the basis of astrobiological research nowadays. And many people are interested in studying their genome, doing some comparative genomics and stuff to understand them better. Where we can find these extremophiles, where here's some examples. This is a cave in northeastern Brazil. Then there's a very dry region where we can find some xerophiles. Also in the Antarctic regions, we can find underneath the snow regions, we can find some extremophiles. But we might talk about them later on some other day, because really time is a constraint here and we have to cover a lot. So with all these examples, something which is very clear is we really don't know much about the life forms on Earth. And just like the saying goes that charity begins at home, I believe that astrobiology also begins on Earth and is the best place to do research and to know about life, so that we can be ready to identify life somewhere beyond Earth. Now, what is astrobiology? Well, it's a very multidisciplinary subject, very multidisciplinary field of science, which incorporates under its umbrella a large number of fields of science. But if I categorize them into very broad aspects, there would be origin of life, studying the ancient life forms in the prebiotic atmospheres, their search for life beyond Earth, definitely, which I was talking about. And to do that, we also need geology and the study of the environment. And finally, we have space health. Just like my fellow presenter, Dilara, will be presenting her research today, and that's on radiation. That's an aspect of this particular domain of astrobiology, that's space health, how to take care the health of human beings and shield them from the cosmic harms. One of the other aspect of astrobiology is the study of microgravity. Microgravity conditions open so many new dimensions to our understanding completely. You must have seen such pictures of astronauts floating around in microgravity conditions. But very interesting things also happen under microgravity conditions. For example, have a look at this water droplet. You would never see a perfectly round water droplet on Earth, and that's because of gravity, 9.8 meter per second squared, the acceleration due to gravity. But when somebody is in the microgravity conditions, the gravity ceases to exist, or at least ceases to dominate. And then forces like surface tension can take over. And similar things also happens with all the fluids in our body, be it blood or lymph, and they start flowing upwards against the gravity. And that poses a lot of challenges to whoever does a space travel. So it's really important to study all those phenomena and all those characteristics. Although space flights are so interesting, many people dream of becoming an astronaut, there are a lot of challenges faced by them. To list a few, well, definitely microgravity is a big challenge which they have to cope up with and adjust. Radiation is a big problem, and again, Dilara has taken the first step to analyze those and their effects. Similarly, there's low oxygen and pressure that leads to stress, and when somebody is stressed, when the body is stressed, so many different mechanisms go on, and it can be noticed. I will be talking about them in just a while. There's extremely fluctuating temperatures as well. And a big problem to space flights is definitely bone and muscle density loss. That's the reason why astronauts need to exercise at least 4 hours daily, but that's not enough as well. That's a huge amount of osteoporosis, which is detected in those astronauts. And we need to do something to counterfeit that and to enable these space missions to be more smooth. Now, talking about the research which can be done under this microgravity condition, which is a very, very interesting aspect and domain. One thing which pretty much coincides with Fine Biotech's ideologies and Fine Biotech's domain is a genomic response to study the differential gene expressions. And similar something was done in association with NASA. The astronauts' whole blood transcriptome was analyzed before they left Earth and after they returned after their mission. And surprisingly, it was found that 234 stress-related genes were differentially regulated. Some were upregulated, some were downregulated, some completely stopped their expression. And that's such a big challenge, you would agree, because as many as 234 stress-related genes going berserk in a human body would definitely lead to certain physiological uh, phenomenon and characteristic leading to certain diseases. And that's pretty much an area where we need to focus and do more research. Talking about diseases in space, well, you must have heard about cancer, right? Cancer is such a big challenge to anybody who travels to space, but it's not so sorrowful and not so depressing news after all, because fighting cancer from space is a very new domain. Let me brief you what happened in this particular research. These cancer cell lines were cultured on Earth under simulated microgravity and also under real microgravity aboard the International Space Station. And it was noticed that once microgravity kicks in, these cell lines lose their potential to get adhered to the surface of the flowers, and they start floating and revolving. And once they do so, they form multicellular spheroids. And these multicellular spheroids lose their property of getting attached to one another, and that leads to the loss of cell signaling and the property of cell signaling. And that completely blocks the process of metastasis. You guys who are studying cancer would definitely know that metastasis is an important stage of cancer where it just becomes worst from worse. And this study already gave that breakthrough that metastasis stops when microgravity kicks in. And that would be something very interesting to study about and to know more, to understand the cell signaling processes well, so that we can devise something, we can understand something which would lead to our successful treatment of cancer in the future. You must be remembering about the example of bone density and muscle density loss that I was talking about. A recent experiment, uh, what they did was, in a recent experiment was, they genetically engineered certain mice, and they knocked down the expression of myostatin and activin A coding gene. And they found that after these mice which lack these particular coding genes, they become very much sturdier. Their muscle and their bones grow at a tremendously high rate. That cell signaling processing is completely shut down. So there's no limitation. And therefore, the muscle density and bone density loss is brought to a very low, a very rock bottom minimal, you can say. So that is another area, another interesting domain to look into, to study more, so that we can understand how this is happening and if we can replicate them in humans. And maybe, who knows, in the future, just like these mighty mice, we would send mighty astronauts onto the space station and even to Mars, who would not suffer from the problem of bone and muscle density loss. There was another experiment which took place in association with Merck and NASA, and this is a monoclonal antibody known as Keytruda. That's again a cancer, that's a treatment for cancer. And what the scientists saw was they could form pretty much homogeneously and uniformly under microgravity conditions, which they could not do in the control sample on Earth because of gravity. You can see such a chaotic picture here, but here it's all well organized and homogeneous. That led to the better characterization of these monoclonal antibodies, which are highly efficient, highly selective, and targeting is almost 100%. So again, as you can see, these research open new domain into this sort of small molecule drug and biologics research and stuff. Finally, let's talk about the recent launch from SpaceX, which took place on June 3rd. And they sent two passengers along with them. That was the tardigrades, or the water bears, and baby squids. The purpose of sending tardigrades to space was to analyze how they are so rigid, how they are not degraded by microgravity conditions or harmful cosmic radiations, and to study that what are the genomic processes, what's happening at the genomic level that's giving them such a great strength. The purpose of sending baby squids, well, baby squids are the model organisms for studying symbiotic relationships, and that's the sole purpose, to understand the symbiotic relationships which they do once they go to space, and that can lead new horizons. We human beings are also in a symbiotic relationship with so many microbes, talking about our gut microbiome. And it's pretty much important to understand the relationship between those symbioses and how microgravity can alter or affect them. So it's pretty much good to say that space is a new lab. And talking about where the lab is located, well, definitely the International Space Station is one of them. We are also coming up with Axiom, which is going to be the world's first commercial space station. Russia is also going to launch their own space station by the year 2025. And good news for my Indian fellows, India is also going to launch their own space station, and all of these space stations will have dedicated microgravity research going on board them. Now, finally, let me quickly talk about the career opportunities because that was one of the agendas. And let me tell that at the very beginning, it doesn't matter from which background you belong. You can still be an astrobiologist. You necessarily don't need to be a biologist to become an astrobiologist. You can be an archaeologist and study the history of Earth when the dinosaurs were extinct, when the oldest microbial fossil was found, the formation of Earth, and also so often. And you can be a biologist just like me, and most of you are biologists. Study the cell organelles, study the nucleus, the cellular processes going inside the central dogma of life, and study the nucleotides, their chemistries, and how they interact. Maybe you could be a microbiologist and study tardigrades and their phenomena. You can also be a geologist studying the formation of Earth, studying these asteroids. Well, these asteroids are very interesting, because they are like those grandmothers who know a lot about our past. Asteroid Bennu is one of them, and it holds the secrets of the formation of the universe itself. And therefore, the OSIRIS-REx mission was planned. And now OSIRIS-REx mission is bringing the samples from Bennu to Earth, and who knows what we are going to find. Pretty much exciting. So, as a geologist, your purpose would be to study the rocks, the history of Earth, and to analyze life's evolution. You can also be an astrophysicist. This is the Perseverance rover and its partner, Ingenuity, which was a key rover sent to Mars for doing astrobiological researches. It landed on the Jezero crater. But why the Jezero crater? Because the Jezero crater is the best evidence of a liquid ocean on Mars. You can clearly find the delta, the tributaries, carbonates and stuff. That's a pretty good hint that Jezero crater was a lake or a water body. And if it was a water body, then definitely life could be a possibility in those particular areas. So, in a nutshell, you can be anybody, a physicist, chemist, biotechnologist, food technologist, architect, engineer. You can belong to any background and still become an astrobiologist. The only thing that you need to do is believe in yourself. Just take that first step. Believe that you can be an astrobiologist, you can contribute in this particular field, and you're good to go. One interesting observation was that I told that you can be a food technologist or a foodie and still contribute to astrobiology. Well, that's pretty awkward, but that's the truth. Here you can see an expert in food technology. Here you can see people hired as they are known as tasters, and their sole purpose is to taste the food, analyze them, and decide what's the best food to be sent to space for the astronauts. So being foodie is no longer cliche. You can definitely earn respectable jobs if you are a foodie. So finally, answering the big question, how to become an astrobiologist, how can I become? What's a career path that I should follow? So this is the career path which is suggested by NASA, and you can definitely follow this path to become an astrobiologist. Right now, learn about astrobiology, attend the podcast, moves, read books, earn a degree in any of the field that you like. You can do your graduate work. You can build a community just like we are doing right now. Pine is doing, Space Nova is doing. That's community building, learning together, and then you earn your PhD, and finally you look for funding opportunities, become a postdoctoral fellow somewhere, and then you start doing your own research in the field of astrobiology, and that's how you can get a glorious career in astrobiology. That's what NASA suggests. And talking about where you can know more about these journeys, well, definitely check out NASA astrobiology program, Ask an Astrobiologist. Various astrobiologists come and share their life's experience in those shows, and that's an eye opener for anybody who wants to be an astrobiologist in the future. So that's all I had for this presentation today. I do hope that I did not take much time. here's the last invitation for anybody who wants to be a part of Space Nova's community of global space enthusiasts. You can join our Discord server and let us together stay tuned and create a space ecosystem where limit actually tends to infinity. Well, thank you so much for your patient audience, guys. It was really amazing for me to talk to you, and I am pretty much open for answering a question. Feel free to ask any question that you might have. And thank you so much for this opportunity.